Greetings, citizens! Justiguy has arrived, returned, and is ready to continue. Higurashi no Nakukoro ni Himatsubushi hen. And the button I want is this one. Let us begin. I had a restless night's sleep. I did nothing but turn over repeatedly during a night that seemed like it lasted for eternity. Even then, I really fell asleep at some point, not really realizing how high in the sky the sun had risen. I shook off the urge to go back to sleep. It was then that I noticed the phone was ringing. The time was almost 10:30 in the morning. It was clearly too late for a wake-up call. Akasaka-san, good morning. Ooishi. Waking up to the sound of Ooishi's voice was a little too much of a shock. A little too much of a shock. My delicate ears were ringing. Hold on. But thanks to that shock, I was suddenly wide awake. Hello? Good morning. Could it be you just woke up? Even though you're on assignment, it's still not to be good to be asleep during regular business. You're absolutely right. I'll be more careful in the future. I have another tidbit that might wake you up even more. There was something interesting mixed in with the lost and found at the HINAMIZAWA police box. Lost and found. Let's leave the details for when you get here. You think you'll be able to make it before noon? No, I'll be there right away. Ooishi already knew what my mission was, and Ooishi said it was something that would wake me up. It was hard to believe that it would be irrelevant to me. Honestly speaking, judging by the information from Sato-san yesterday, knowing that my cover was already blown, I couldn't wander to and from Hinamizawa carelessly. In other words, my investigation was at an impasse. If there was some information there that could put me back on the trail, that would be nothing less than a stroke of good fortune. After vigorously washing my face, I did not report to my superiors, pulled on my jacket, and hailed a taxi, heading towards the Okinomiya police station. Oh, you're here. The genius mahjong player has arrived. My apologies for being late. So, exactly what popped up? With absolutely no intention of reminiscing about last night's mahjong game, I pressed him. Get to the point. Ooishi, anticipating that I would act that way, cut to the chase without any resistance. Like I said earlier, something arrived from the Hinamizawa police boxes lost and found this morning. Lost items that were turned over to the police box were sent to Okinomiya Station after the paperwork was filled out. Ooishi pulled out a plastic bag from her drawer and laid its labeled contents on the desk. Is that a wallet? Indeed. There was small change inside, but no bills. We thought that a pickpocket threw it away after pulling out the contents. At first. I didn't understand how this wallet, so far removed from Tokyo, could possibly be related to the kidnapping. If it had drawn Ooishi's attention, it would have to be something traumatic, like if the wallet belonged to the missing grandchild. That would be absurd. Like something that convenient would happen. If that was it, then there were probably initials written on the wallet. Like the initials of Inugai Toshiki, the minister's grandson, T.I. Thinking like that, at this point I didn't suppose that this wallet was something that could get Ooishi so excited. Ooishi, after putting on a pair of disposable plastic gloves, handed me a pair of the same. I didn't feel that this wallet was such an important thing, so I had my doubts about whether there was any point in putting on gloves. However, I didn't want Oishi's intentions to go to waste, so I put them on. Ooishi opened up the plastic bag and pulled it out, showing me the back. As I had imagined, there were initials engraved on there. but it was slightly more detailed than what I had thought, with I Toshiki marked on it. Ooishi grinned at me with a look on his face that said, "See? We can't confirm from that this belongs to the minister's grandson," I informed him calmly. This wallet was irrelevant. It was nothing more than Oishi's overeagerness. First of all, there was absolutely no way in this distant locale that the missing grandson's wallet would be found with such convenient timing. After all, the Yonagafuchi Defense Alliance wasn't related to the case in the first place. So there was no way this wallet belonged to the grandson. Why I wanted to decide that was the case, even I didn't really know. Even though what should have been a top secret case was leaked before I had even been dispatched. In this situation, how can I say this was definitely unrelated? Would it be more prudent to pay attention to this wallet? It had only been a couple of days since I arrived in Hinamizawa. But in those couple of days, due to the number of remarkable events, my nerves might have become a little, just a little frayed. Shaking my head slightly, I cleared it of unnecessary thoughts. She opened the wallet's zipper, revealing the contents. Inside were small change and a number of crumpled receipts. Ooishi, from that jumble, pulled out a folded card. Seeing that, my heart stopped for a moment. It was a card from a dental examination. The name Inugai Toshiki and the age. A perfect match. The dentist location was in Tokyo. There was no need to explain any further. How far was it from Tokyo to Hinamizawa? Far enough that taking the bullet trains and cars would still take several hours. Why would a wallet with a dental examination card from Tokyo inside show up in Hinamizawa? Could it belong to a tourist who came from Tokyo? Or maybe a villager on vacation to Tokyo just happened to pay a visit to the dentist? No, it had to have fallen into somebody's bag by accident. In my mind, I desperately struggled to find a possible excuse as to why this wallet didn't belong to Inugai Toshiki. It was as if it just wouldn't do for this wallet to belong to him. However, weeding out any possibility for error one by one, the haze surrounding the wallet in front of me faded, gradually letting it come into clear focus. See? I felt a shiver of electricity run up my spine. My pulse quickened, and a thin film of sweat began to coat my entire body. From Oishi's point of view, I was probably slack-jawed and spaced out with a slovenly look on my face. Did you get information from the dental office? That's your job, Akasaka-san. I didn't go that far. When did this wallet show up? The person who picked it up was a villager. They did so yesterday, it seemed. Not that. I mean, when was this wallet dropped? It rained here last week, exactly 7 days ago. It doesn't look like the contents are water damage, so the longest it could be would probably be 6 days. Does anybody at this station have knowledge of the existence of this wallet? The officer who first encountered it at the Hinamizawa police box, and also the 2 or 3 people in charge of the lost and found. Other than that, it's just me and you. If it's involved in a classified case, it'd be bad to talk about, wouldn't it? I don't intend to wag my tongue. May I borrow a phone? Go ahead. Dial 0 to get an outside line. Ooh, we getting serious. I dialed the phone number inscribed on the examination card. I could hear my pulse pounding inside my head. Could there possibly be something so absurd? The address on the receipts and cards inside the wallet were all from around the area where the grandson lived. The name on the examination card was also a match. The time we deduced that the wallet had been left behind also matched up with the timeline of the kidnapping. Of course, it was possible I could just laugh it off as a big pile of coincidences. There wasn't any strong evidence. Rather than all this circumstantial proof, the contents of the phone call I was about to make would have a much greater meaning. Hello, sorry to keep you waiting. This is Double X Dental Office. Hello, this is the Double X Police. I have a misplaced wallet here, and I'm trying to get in contact with the owner. Would you be able to help me? Inside the wallet, there was an examination card from your office. Yes, the name is Inugai Toshiki. If I give you the number on the card, would you be able to look up the phone number? Yes, thank you. If you could. Still holding the receiver, I pulled out a notebook from my breast pocket with my free hand. I opened it up to the page with the grandson's address and phone number recorded on it. Yes, hello. Yes, go ahead. I compared the phone number written in my notebook to the one that was being read out on the other end of the line. During that process, I spun around to look behind me uneasily. I locked eyes. Eyes with Aishi. Oh boy, I gotta fix this habit. Is this like freaking... Am I dyslexic and just only finding out about it from reading VNs out loud on stream? I locked eyes with Ooishi. Ooishi looked puzzled, wondering what the matter was. Why would I feel uneasy and look behind? Oh! That was because the person on the end of the line was reading out the numbers as though doing so straight from my notebook. It seemed that HQ was in quite an uproar thanks to my report. No matter how many times the authenticity of the evidence I had linked to the grandson was called into question, I could only respond that it was the truth. When the lead investigator first picked up the phone, I was grilled about the evidence I'd found that was almost too good to be true, if I do say so myself. But after having doubt after doubt dispelled, he fell into silence. The receiver was finally handed over to the section chief. When he picked it up, the background thumb on the other end of the line disappeared, and I knew that it had gone completely silent. After asking the same questions about the wallet and that the lead investigator did, the chief quietly spoke his next words. Got it. We'll dispatch several people as reinforcements. They should be able to make it there by evening. Akasaka-kun, please continue with your investigation of the area. Get some information on the spot where the wallet was found. Kano-san will select some people and head directly there. The fact that he was sending Kano, the lead investigator, here meant that the chief had decided there was a possibility that the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance was somehow implicit in the kidnapping. Oh, this is new music! However, it felt as though, until the lead investigator, whom he trusted, had verified the evidence with own eyes, he was still going to be skeptical about it. How'd it go? It seems that HQ is sending reinforcements. I was ordered to investigate the area. Where was the wallet dropped? Around Takatsudo, apparently. This is Okinomiya. All the way over here, this is HINAMIZAWA. Then even further upstream, way up around here, is Takatsudo. Ooishi explained where the wallet was found by pointing to locations on the map on the wall. This place called Takatsudo was even more remote than Hinamizawa was. There's hardly anybody living in the area around Takatsudo. It was deserted a long time ago. It's littered with abandoned houses, so it's really quite desolate around there. Ooishi-san, could I ask you to guide me to Takatsudo? Yeah, I don't mind. You can't really get in and out of Hinamizawa as you please by yourself, after all. Of course, I'll have to make you wear the cap and mask again. That Ooishi had agreed to accompany me was very reassuring. If Sato-san's info was to be believed, my cover had been blown. I wasn't sure if the villagers had realized that the fresh meat dispatched from public safety was the tourist that had visited the village yesterday. In other words, me. But deciding that they hadn't noticed would have been overly optimistic. Given a cursory thought, Takatsudo, where the wallet was found, couldn't be ruled out as a hiding spot for the kidnappers. The Takatsudo area didn't have any residential buildings, nor was it along a highway. There wasn't a reason for even the locals to go out of their way to visit it. It was exactly what you would call a long-forgotten ghost town at the end of the extra space road. You couldn't ask for a better place to hold a kidnapped grandson. Also, you couldn't get to Takatsudo without passing through Hinamizawa first. Those several conditions made the area all the more important. I couldn't brush it off any longer. There was no longer any doubt that Onikafuchi Defense Alliance, or somebody hired by them, were involved in the kidnapping. If that was the case, then the fact that this wallet was found might have already been leaked to them. They even knew so much as how the Public Safety Division was operating. the case of the wallet couldn't be something they didn't know. In that case, there was a possibility that the enemy was lying in wait. But wouldn't it make more sense that they leaked the wallet? Dive alone into enemy territory, surrounded by enemy territory, to say the least, required an amount of courage, nay, recklessness, that I did just not have outside of a mahjong parlor. Without your company, Ooishi-san, I wouldn't be able to step into the village so easily. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Honestly, I thought you would ask for more money. Well, if you were being honest, Hinamizawa isn't exactly a place I like. If we're being honest, Hinamizawa isn't exactly a place I like to go to. I'd at least appreciate it if you paid for cab fare. Still, it's not a request I can refuse from a friend that's played at the same table as me. Boy, she grinned as he pounded me on the back. Oh, they're friends! It struck me that he just didn't want to jump ship rather than having any sort of sense of duty towards his job. Even so, that didn't really matter. Right now, I really appreciated the gesture. Well then, shall we hurry up and get going? The enemy knew that the police had obtained the wallet, and they would probably have moved the hostage to a different place. There wasn't a moment to lose. Ooishi, without regard to the fact that we were about to head out, began to remove his jacket. What are you doing? Well, just a precaution. If you want me to poke the beehive to get your honey, I have to be rather well prepared, you see. You want to put one on too? They have to put protection on for their date, guys. This is serious. Roy, she pulled from the drawer below the desk was a stab-proof vest. It was an odd place to cut the music up, but alright. Or maybe not. Maybe the best place. His name was Inugai Toshiki, grandson of the Minister of Construction, Inugai. There was only one reason for him being here. If you didn't include gym or art classes, his grades were above average. That was the result of having private tutoring sessions twice a week. If you omitted the fact that he still couldn't do pull-ups, there wasn't much else that would make him hate school. Of course, he understood full well that his grandfather was a cabinet minister, but he also knew that not too many people were that interested in their relationship. He didn't like to go out of his way to bring up his grandfather or to call him the Minister of Construction. And finally, he at least tried to know a little more about what kind of work the Minister of Construction did than your average Joe. What that entailed was that when you tried your best to make life better for the masses, sometimes you made a few enemies. He knew that all too well from the time he'd spent as class representative. His grandfather had many enemies. He knew that he might personally catch some of that fallout, so he had to be twice as cautious. He was taught that by his parents. That's why, the moment he was kidnapped, he instantly knew this was one of those occasions. He understood that he wasn't being treated as Inugai Toshiki, the person, but rather as Inugai Toshiki, the grandson of the Minister of Construction. That he wasn't personally at fault, but that this was the result of some unavoidable trouble with his grandfather's work. It made little difference, but when he realized it wasn't because of anything he did, he was able to relax, if only a little. Of course, at first he was struck with a terror befitting his age, wondering what was going to happen to him. But after a while of being tied up and only able to stay lying down, he began to ponder a great many things. First, he thought about the reason he was being abducted like this. He understood the answer to that easily. He was taken hostage to coerce his grandfather, the minister. There was no doubt about that. He didn't know exactly what the Minister of Construction did, but it was easy to imagine that there was much to be gained from threatening him. He respected his grandfather more than most. He earnestly believed that his own grandfather was within the top 20 most important. He was in the top 20 of the most important people in Japan. That was exactly why he wouldn't forgive anyone who tried to threaten his beloved grandfather. More importantly, he wouldn't forgive anyone who would use him as a tool to threaten his grandfather. His grandfather was really busy and rarely had time to meet with relatives. That's why, with what little time he did manage to scrape together, he just dropped by unannounced. And as an apology for not being able to meet during New Year's or summer vacation, he doted on his grandson very, very much. The number of times that Toshiki was looked upon with disregard just because his grandfather was a politician and a minister certainly weren't few. But he never thought even once that he wanted his grandfather to quit being a politician. Because it was his beloved grandfather, he wanted him to continue his career as long as possible from the bottom of his heart. However, Toshiki was now being held hostage, and his grandfather was being threatened. His grandfather, who called him the apple of his eye, was surely suffering. He might do anything to save his grandson, maybe even putting aside his ideology if it was required to save his grandson. He might cave into the culprit's demands if it meant saving his grandson. And Toshiki thought about that. Inexplicable anger welled up within him. In his current situation, he was unable to forgive the cowards who would make his beloved grandfather suffer by using such dastardly means. A feeling swelled up inside of him, displacing the fear. How dare these people, whose homes will be flooded by a dam, do this? What he thought of first was something any boy would imagine. Get out of these bonds, beat up the bad guys, and hand them over to the police. Images of all the brave heroes from all the manga he had read passed through the back of his mind. In his imaginary scenario, he slipped his bonds easily, floating like a butterfly to evade his captors, and stinging like a bee to bring them all down. In the end, it was nothing more than his silly little fantasy. And with his vision obstructed and unable to see anything, it was something that he could get into more than any anime at the moment. In actuality, he was enjoying these little scenarios in his head for that long period of time he was tied up. His captors hadn't really done anything to him that they would feel sorry for. However, eventually, he began to grow tired of his fantasies, and more realistic scenarios began to run through his head. It was then he realized that none of them were a solution. Yes, he wanted to do something for his grandfather, who was being threatened. That he was being held here to inflict pain on his grandfather was the thing that he could least forgive, and also the most vexing. Then he noticed there was a much simpler way he could save his grandfather without having to beat up his despicable captor. That was to remove himself as a hostage from the hands of these villains. If he was to disappear from here, his captors would have nothing to threaten his grandfather with. The captors had restrained him, but they didn't treat him roughly, and they made sure he was fed well enough. Meaning at most was nothing more than the means for their threat. They weren't looking to bully or kill him out of spite. If he behaved, no ill would befall him. Realizing that gave him a strong sense of courage. Carrying his train of thought this far, he let it run its course to its natural conclusion. Right now, at this moment, Inugai Toshiki had decided to. His ears had been stuffed with a sponge-like material, acting as makeshift earplugs. However, they didn't actually do much to block out any sound, and he could overhear everything his captors were saying. Realizing that this was to his advantage, even when his captors spoke to him, he acted like he couldn't hear them due to the earplugs. His captors, thinking that he couldn't hear their conversation, talked about all sorts of things without any reservation. Thanks to that, he was able to obtain various pieces of information. First off, this was in Tokyo. It seemed that this was quite a distance away, and on top of the countryside, nestled deep in the mountains. It also seemed that his captors were inconvenienced living out here, so he could deduce that this place was far removed from any sort of town. Finally, whenever they went out to buy food or other supplies, they would always take a car. That fact caused him some dismay, because he knew that the method he learned at school of running away blindly while shouting for help wouldn't work here. He paused his little mental escape scenario there. His ultimate goal was to find somebody who would help him. If somebody who fit that description wasn't close by, his chances of escaping successfully were slim. A desolate, far-off land in the mountains. A place where you couldn't even go shopping without using a car. In this situation, escaping would be very difficult. He grew depressed, and after a little while, he returned to his original scenario. Imagining becoming a hero, like in the manga he read, and beating down his captors became his respite. However, he played those delusions out in it. His heart, hating to surrender, continued to search for a way to escape. And then, thought of a way. If the goal was far away, then all he had to do was get closer. His goal, in a nutshell, was to find somebody who would help him. In other words, somebody other than his captors. If he faked being sick, then his captors would have to take him to the hospital or to bring a doctor to him. They would probably be reluctant to, but he already knew that the hostage was more important than anything. In the off chance that something happened, like him dying occurred, they wouldn't be able to threaten anybody anymore. Luckily, he had an experience that would help him fake a serious illness. At the end of last year, he was inadvertently involved in a car accident and had to undergo surgery. The scar from that surgery was still clearly visible on his lower torso. He recalled the pain and suffering from that time. The existence of that experience would make a huge impact on the realism of his performance. He was quite confident in his ability to fake an illness. His captors at first took that as a sign he needed to use the washroom. Tying only his arms, they tried to bring him there while he was still blindfolded. But he didn't try to get up. His hands, now free, only clutched at his abdomen as he writhed in agony. Hey, but what's wrong? Does your stomach hurt? He still had his earplugs in, so he had to pretend he didn't hear his captors asking the question. He was about to nod, so he hurriedly had to stop himself. Oh, what's the matter? Yeah, the kid's clutching at his stomach. Must be a stomach ache or something. His captor looked down on his suffering form for a bit. One of them proposed a course of action, while another laid his doubts that Toshiki might be faking it. What's wrong, boy? Your tummy hurt? His ears are plugged, so he can't hear you. Well, that's a problem. You got any medicine works on stomach pain? I want to go to the pharmacy and buy some. When it comes to stomach pain, there's a bunch of different meds, isn't there? As long as we don't know the cause, we shouldn't just buy him any old medicine. He's old in his stomach. Maybe he's just constipated. If you buy him some medicine for that, maybe he'll calm down. Yeah, it won't kill him if we're wrong, neither. Decide something like that on your own. Might be appendicitis or something. My uncle suddenly got it a while ago. That was pretty scary. One of the captors leaned over beside the boy, who was bent over in agony. I feel sorry for the kid. Whoa, whole body's covered in sweat. Is it your stomach? Does it hurt? Hey, if it hurts, you shouldn't clutch it so tightly. It'll only make it worse. Realizing that his captors were concerned about his stomach, he inadvertently let his shirt right up, letting the scar from his surgery come into plain view. Vision was still obscured with packing tape, so he couldn't see their reaction to his scar. His captors were taken aback, and judging from their momentary silence, he had obtained the reaction he was looking for. Just a smart fucking kid, I gotta say. Well done, my man. Well done. Hey, this is bad. This scar, it's not that old. Does your boy have a fever? Is there a thermometer around? No way we have one, but that's a lot of sweat. Yeah, his forehead feels pretty hot, I think. Uh, I've heard that under prolonged stress, old wounds can be aggravated. What do we do? Are you saying the medicine won't work? We don't know what surgery this scar was from, but in any case, it's bad. In the worst case, it could be fatal. This is bad. This is really, really bad. Maybe we should have a doctor take a look at it. At this rate, there's a might suddenly die on us. New guy Toshiki, with those few words, knew that the situation was progressing exactly as he had envisioned it, and snickering him to himself on the inside, pressed his act even further. He didn't even need to see to know that his captors were panicked and were running around like chickens with their heads cut off at this troublesome turn of events. Should we take him to the clinic? No, no good. Probably better if the doctor came here. Dr. Irie, you mean? Is that okay? Will that be alright? Worse if anything happened at a hostage. What we can do? Emergency! One of the captors hurriedly left in the car. Another of the men, completely shaken up at this point, wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. It looked like they were bringing the doctor. As long as the doctor wasn't an accomplice, that doctor was his goal. He was someone he should seek help from. His captors were probably wary of that happening. They would be prepared for it. This would all come down to luck. Some of the sweat emerging from his brow was that nervousness. At that moment, the packing tape that was covering his eyes and ears were torn off. The burning light that he was seeing for the first time in several days hurt his eyes. After that, the gag that made him hard for him to breathe was also removed. Are you all right, kid? We're bringing a doctor to you now. Just hold on for a bit. The doctor was coming. The doctor was coming. Now, how is he going to ask for his help, and how was he going to get away from his captors? A plethora of thoughts began swirling through his mind. I think you know this already, but don't say anything unnecessary to the doctor. I don't want to hurt you or anything. You understand that, right? Toshiki nodded while feigning pain and obedience. Expectations and the enemy's expectations. Whether they doubted he was faking his illness or not, they knew what his goal was, to try to stop it. His stomach contracted from the stress of this gambit, making it seem like his stomach really was starting to hurt. No, it really was. But there was no reason to panic. If he failed with his approach to the doctor, there was nothing to lose. There was something to lose. It was this method of faking illness to get in touch with the doctor. You could think of other methods from here on out. It wasn't much, but at the present, this was the easiest and most dramatic way he could think of. The more he thought about it, the more it looked like this was his first and last gambit. He heard the sound of a car approaching once again. The sound of the car doors being hurriedly opened and shut. The sounds of several footsteps approaching. A young man in a white medical coat. As he acknowledged the boy, a suspicious look showed itself on his face. Who's he? Not one of the kids from the village, is he? The captors didn't respond. From the looks of it, the young doctor had realized that this was an abnormal situation. One of the captors talked threateningly. That's got nothing to do with you, Doc. For a while, the doctor and the captors silently glared at one another. However, unable to stand the sight of the boy continuing to suffer, the doctor, as the captors had hoped, didn't press any further. I'm concerned about this old surgical scar. What kind of operation was it? Well, we don't know. I should really bring him back to the clinic. Doc, we really can't really do that. The doctor said he wanted to bring back the boy back to the clinic, but the captors were simply silently shook their heads at the notion. It was a fleeting hope, but it was only natural that the captors would refuse. At that moment, his eyes met with the doctor's. Seeing that the boy's painful state was abnormal, the doctor suspected it was a serious illness. Are you all right? The doctor. When was this surgical scar from? Oh, God, last year. It was from an accident. Accident? See, this is a problem. He couldn't let the doctor figure out that he was faking it here. He had to somehow figure out some way to keep this going and tell the doctor that he was being confined and needed help. I'm going to touch the affected area, okay? If it hurts, tell me where. Ah! Seeing that it was extremely painful, the doctor crossed his arms and began to ponder. He had to somehow get himself to a hospital. To Ryugai Toshiki, faking his illness was the performance of a lifetime. Achievement Award. Meanwhile, good work, everyone. I know it's hot, but please do your best. If you catch anybody illegally dumping, please contact someone immediately. They'll act quickly. Thank you for your cooperation, Ooishi-san. Please. A gap wide enough for a single car was opened in the barricade. Ooishi, showing his gratitude, or perhaps a threatening attitude, with a short beep on the horn, rolled the car forward through the checkpoint. This time, my appearance was the very embodiment of the word suspicious. A baseball cap, mask, and sunglasses. On top of that, even though it was sweltering, I was wearing a hoodie. Any respectable police officer would be loath to not stop me for questioning. I had meant to be overcautious, knowing full well that my face was known, but it might have already been too late for that to have any. Using that as an excuse, I doffed the unbearably hot hoodie and extra space windbreaker, ripped off the mask and hat, and threw them in the seat behind me. Oh my. Is that okay? With a cheap little disguise like this, they probably figured it out anyways. That just might be the case. Ooishi, probably thinking that my unexpected behavior was funny, continued to laugh. The beautiful and pristine scenery of Hinamizawa spread out before me. The village itself would have been quite beautiful if it weren't for the complicated circumstances surrounding it at the moment. I would absolutely love to take Yukiya here for a drive one day. Come to think of it, I didn't get a chance to call her. I played around with the idea in my head. But in reality, this village wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I had heard everything at the prefectural headquarters. At the heart of this village, the intelligence network that the three families wielded was, due to blood ties and regional relationships, unbelievably well organized. The net spread not just around Hinamizawa itself, but encapsulated the entirety of the city of Shishibone as well. When I first heard that, somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I didn't take it completely seriously. The local organization out in the boonies here have something so great. I couldn't deny that somewhere in the back of my mind I had ridiculed the thought. But not only were they really threatening the minister, but they had demonstrated they had a complete grasp on our movements, which were supposed to be top secret. They were almost like the secret police that controlled a small Eastern European country like in some spy novel. The villagers here wouldn't bat an eye at getting their hands dirty if it meant fighting the damn project. I also heard something like that at the prefectural headquarters. Ah, now that you mention it, when I first arrived here, why she also said that this place was like a war zone, didn't he? The residents of this village were all at the same time freedom fighters. Sonic, he can really move. Sonic, he's got an attitude. Sonic, he is the fastest thing alive. Sorry, that was totally mood killing and uncalled for, and I apologize. Because although by definition they were no different than guerrillas or militia, they weren't protected by the Geneva Convention, but they also didn't have to adhere by those rules either. This place was more of a quagmire than a legitimate battlefield. Secret war was unfolding. I could drive along because Ooishi was with me. But if I was to leave this car for even something as trivial as looking for a vending machine, there was a chance I wouldn't return. Even though a single shot hadn't been fired, this was a battlefield. Love is a battlefield. God, I'm sorry. No, the reason why bullets weren't flying was simply because it was hard for a civilian to obtain a gun in Japan. Okay. So they were probably just equipped with weapons other than guns that were easier to obtain. That why Ooishi was wearing that stab-proof vest. Wasn't it? Excuse me. Thoughts. Akasaka-san, are you nervous? The fact that I was apprehensive was, of course, up on by Ooishi. You already figured it out. There was no point in trying to deny or hide it. Of course I am. Headed into the heart of enemy territory alone, aren't we? I'm worried about if something unlikely happens with just the two of us. Something unlikely? It'll be alright. And everybody in this village our enemy? If everybody gets their story straight, they could murder someone in broad daylight and there wouldn't be a shred of evidence. I'm asking about something like that. This was what the ironclad rule of not barging into a Yakuza office alone was about. There wasn't a neutral party involved. That area wasn't bound by the laws of common sense. If anything happened, you wouldn't be able to prove it, and there wasn't anybody who would take your side. Pretty much the definition of poking the bear. I've left word that we're headed towards the Hinamizawa area, and in the worst case, we've also got a radio. I know you're scared, Akasaka-san, but it's not that easy to pull off the perfect crime. Well, of course, that doesn't mean we can let our guard down either. Akasaka-san, you're too worked up over this. You were more relaxed the last time we came here together, weren't you? Laughing it off, Ooishi thumped his chest and grinned, as if to say I could depend on him. Well, if it gets really iffy, this comes with having the badge. Ooishi made a motion by sticking out its index finger. It was undoubtedly the image of a gun. Will it be of any use? You're not afraid of dealing with the aftermath after you shoot. You're very reassuring. An officer's gun was only for show. If you really wanted to fire it, there were quite a number of stipulations, and you had to be prepared for the long probationary period afterwards. That definitely wasn't worth it. So even if an officer did unholster his gun, there wasn't one who actually wanted to pull the trigger. Akasaka-san, are you carrying one? A piece. Piece of what? Cake? Akasaka-san. Oh, yeah. You ever fired it? I have. Training, though. Oh, I guess that'd be true. Well, then, have you, Ooishi-san? Me? Nah, there's no way. What was this? I thought he was laughing at me because he had experience. The two of us laughed together. The two of us laughed together. I've also never pointed the barrel at anybody. I've looked down the barrel of a gun a few times, though. Just being made to look down the barrel like that is enough to shorten your lifespan by about 3 years. Even if you'd never fired a gun before, you couldn't even begin to compare the amount of experience Ooishi had over me. At a time like I could understand it. Oh, hands unreliable. I didn't want to come this way in the middle of the day, but there's no way for a car to get through. Akasaka-san, just in case, put on the mask again to hide your face, please. What's the matter? Can you not hear it because the air conditioning is too loud? I'll turn it off. Uh-oh. Try opening the window. When I opened the window, a blast of hot air blew inside. And then I could hear play. At that moment, the forest gave way on either side of us and our view expanded suddenly. There could be seen the Hinamizawa Dam construction ground. The very front line for Hinamizawa village. We're absolutely opposed to the construction of the Hinamizawa Dam. The crackling there of someone's voice sounded over an enormous loudspeaker. Loudspeaker, loudspeaker, loudspeaker. The roar of angry voices continued to rumble. The incredible volume had become a veritable sound cannon, spewing out its ammunition. The prefabricated site office was surrounded by 2 sets of high fences laced with barbed wire. Lined up in front of those fences were riot police and their vehicles, and surrounding it all were the villagers. They howled at their protesters against the dam as a single entity. Oh, there's not too many of them today. We're in luck. That's not too many. Yeah, when there's a lot of them, the crowd reaches as far as the road. You wouldn't even be able to inch forward in a car. First, due to their overwhelming intensity, it looked to me like there was actually more people, that there was more people than there actually was, but upon closer inspection, there were at most 50 to 70 of them. The 6 or 7 propaganda trucks lined up that looked like they belonged to a band of thugs were a strange enough sight. The villagers were also wearing helmets and bandanas, as well as covering their faces with masks, adding to the oddity of it all. The propagandist trucks, after braying their chorus, had their volume turned up even higher and began to flood the area with sutras. To say that the noise was downright violent wouldn't be an understatement. From this distance, it was still this loud. The glass in the office was probably rattling from the noise. They can't do anything there but take it. Those riot squad guys, every one of them is wearing earplugs, but they're still having their hearing damaged. Or subs. Can't you do something about it with the old noise ordinance laws? Our prefecture doesn't have any laws regarding noise ordinance. Also, those are sutras, right? We can't regulate religious activities. Those guys are pretty smart. Is what I think Ooishi said. Actually, no matter how tightly the window was shut, the booming sound of the sutras still filled the car. I couldn't even hear what Ooishi, who was sitting right next to me, was saying. As the car approached the line of propaganda trucks, the blare became difficult to bear. It wasn't enough to just plug my ears with my fingers. I had to hold my head to keep my skull from splitting apart. If I had seen this terrifying energy sooner, I would have probably understood what Hinamizawa village was much quicker. Now I knew. They wouldn't blink an eye, sacrificing themselves in order to protect their hometown. So goddamn noisy. Shut up, shut up, shut up. I had throbbed and felt like it was going to split apart. My eardrums crackled, and on top of it all, I felt like I was going to throw up. With the road crowded with a throng of squatters, the propaganda trucks, and the riot police's vehicles, it was in no way easy to get by. Even if you tried to shoo the squatters with the car horn, they were also wearing earplugs, oblivious to the noises from outside world, and wouldn't easily move. The car could only inch forward at a snail's pace. Even then, the car eventually got through, starting to leave the tumultuous noise behind. Hey, the bald guy that was playing Mahjong with us last night? Remember him? I remember that there was an older person who didn't exactly mince words. The guy that Ooishi called old man. There was someone like that. You see, he's the foreman of the main construction site. He's probably holed up in that prefab building, trying to work while irritated out of his mind. Poor fella. He wouldn't be able to stand it it's like that every day. Yeah. There's no end to the number of people who can't handle it and quit. Every time that happens, their wages go up, so I won't say it's in vain. Even having to deal with all that noise and hostility, they still made a wage Ooishi found enviable. Damn it, these guys, they hear, can't they? A group of squatters were in the way of the car. Ooishi, sufficiently annoyed, laid into the horn, but there was no indication that they were moving anytime soon. In this din, could they not even hear a car horn? Or did they hear it and were being malicious? If there were any riot police nearby, they would have made people move, but it just so happened there weren't any around here. Ah, jeez. Wait just a minute. Ooishi opened the door. The hot air and even more heated roar of the crowd spilled into the car. Ooishi said something as he grinned widely, but I couldn't hear what it was. He was getting them to move. Something like that. Ooishi stepped out of the car and closed the door. The din faded slightly. I stared blankly as Ooishi headed towards the group and started some sort of conversation. Maybe we'd find the minister's grandson in Takatsudo. At the very least, I wanted to find him there. Find him and slip the curse, the bonds of this incomprehensible village. And only pray. That moment, shadow suddenly over me. Somebody was standing right outside the window, blocking the sunlight. I spun around, looked up, and realized who the backlit figure was. Huh. It was a girl. It was Furuderi. The girl stared down at me with a bored look in her. I didn't have any justification for it, but I felt like I had been found by somebody I couldn't be found by. To fill the silence, I raised my hand as I mouthed a meek greeting. Of course, there was no way she heard my small voice in this clamor. But even then, she should have seen me wave my hand in greeting. In spite of that, she simply stared down at me with a cold look on it. That moment, the noise and heat spread through the car once again. Ooishi had returned to the driver's seat. Taking a look at the group that were blocking the road, it started to move aside while glaring our way. Sorry to keep you waiting. Shall we go? She registered the figure of the girl behind me. One of the villagers came over and picked her up, a manner of, "It's dangerous, so get away." It was then that she whispered one or two words, however, I couldn't hear any of it. Well then, let's go. I'm gonna gun it, okay? But of course, still within the speed limit. As if to shake off the still audible angry voices, Ooishi floored the gas. along with the roar and din of the din and the shouting of the villagers and the girl, quickly disappeared behind us. As soon as we're through here, we're in Takatsudo. Are you okay if we end up getting into a firefight? I'll be fumbling with the safety at the last moment, you hear? Well, she laughed mockingly again. Was more concerned with what the girl had said, however, as I was vaguely bothered by it. What was she trying to say with that apathetic and candid expression? I suppose it's normal if you're nervous from here on out. But if you don't deal with it, there's a chance you might do something rash. There was no longer a way to confirm what the girl had tried to tell me. It might have been that the world who warned me to go back to Tokyo. It might have been that the girl who warned me to go back to Tokyo again, or else was saying me who was here now, ignoring that warning. Though I warned you. What a fool. What a fool. I had the feeling she said something like that. When they cry, they cry, they cry. Oh, how they cry. If you were to call Hinamizawa a rather lonely village, the Katsudo was outright desolate. For your everyday city boy like me, I just couldn't understand why anybody would force themselves to live here. There were signs that people had, but they were all covered in dust or enveloped in ivy, indicating that it was all abandoned. People really lived in a place like this, didn't they? Well, it was a long time ago. A place like this is pretty rough for old folk to live. And the younger people probably wanted to try living in a more suitable place. There's nobody left to take the reins, all that gets left is this. Even if I had no personal attachment to the village, seeing the disused buildings made me feel a little sentimental. It seemed that Ooishi also felt the same way. Was the wallet found over here? The person who found it must have a good reason to come out to this desolate place. Yeah, there's some villagers who know the field out in the mountains here. Pass by here in the morning and evenings. Villagers who work in the fields walk by here every day? No way. They probably go as far as they can by car. For the early mornings and evenings, they pass by here and just happen to find a single wallet. They probably did, and where exactly did they say they found it? In a thicket just a bit further ahead. The person who found the wallet just happened to have some stomach cramps and was planning to use the thicket to do his business, it seemed. It was there he happened to find it, probably hoping there was some toilet paper in there. Everything about that story just seems a little too convenient. Right from the discovery of the wallet, just can't shake the feeling that something's off. Express the feeling that I had from the start of the day, quite frankly. Quite frankly indeed. It seemed too good to be true, but it was unwavering proof. But it was too perfect, sickeningly so. That was my feeling. I might actually be onto something by saying it's all a little too perfect. Meaning, the truth is, I heard a little something from a friend of mine in the 4th Division. Where Sonozaki Oryo referenced the kidnapping of the minister's grandson. She referenced it? Yeah. In several days since the minister's grandson had just been kidnapped. Poor boy. It'd be nice if they let him go soon. Seems that old Oreo muttered something like that while on her veranda. And that little musing was conveyed to the various people working deep behind the scenes at the Sonozaki family. Right, I had heard something earlier from Sato-san, the informant. That when the leader Oreo had a... everybody in the family would be considerate. So in essence, she gave the order to release the hostage? I see it that way. The wallet being conveniently discovered was just a ploy to hand the boy over to the police. Okay, but the guys holding him don't seem to know that. Why would they release the hostage? Well, there's only one reason why somebody would release a hostage, isn't there? What is it? They reached a deal. That would mean the minister promised to halt the HINAMIZAWA dam project. Dam project will definitely go away. In that moment, those words that the girl had said resurfaced in the back of my mind. In the end, it was turning out exactly as she had proclaimed. That young girl knew the circumstances. She knew everything about this kidnapping incident, from the beginning to the end. Akasaka. The girl unexpectedly called my name. What is it? Go back to Tokyo. Huh? Before long, you will woefully regret coming to this village. That would be an incredibly pathetic thing to see. So I thought I'd warn you right now. Why would I come to regret it? Stop whining. When you tried crossing the road when the don't walk sign was up, did your parents finish explaining why it was dangerous before pulling you back to the sidewalk? They'd pull you back right away, wouldn't they? They'd pull you back before explaining why it was dangerous, wouldn't they? In other words, it's something like that. The girl who knew everything, start to finish, and warned me in the beginning. Go back to Tokyo. Akasaka, coward. We'll probably find the boy. What happens afterwards will probably be a bit of a problem. How it'll be a problem, though, is something a single officer like me can't figure out. You know a girl named Rika? Riot said was such a non sequitur that Ooishi sat in stunned silence for a while. Of course I know her. She's the only daughter of the Furude family. One of the 3 families. What kind of girl is she? Well, well. This was an unexpected name to hear. I'm a bit surprised. Does public safety think that the Furude family smells fishy and wants to keep an eye on them? Share some of that information with me, please. No, it's not like that. It's just something that caught my attention. Well, whatever. It wouldn't do to not answer a question from a friend I have sat at the same table with. I'm honored that you call me a friend. So, that little lady is, well, somewhat of a village mascot. She's beloved by everybody in the village. Some of the older folk worship her especially. Worship? I don't know much about it, you see. Girls born in the Furude family have somewhat of a sacred implication, it seems. One of the local beliefs in Hinamizawa, a living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, or something like it. So the story goes, apparently. Oyashiro-sama. Now that you mention it, I think I saw Oyashiro-sama written on some of the Alliance's banners. What is Oyashiro-sama exactly? It's the name of the guardian deity of Hinamizawa. They believe it'll exact punishment on those who would do ill towards the village. Well, if there was such a convenient god around, the guys at the dam would have long since been done in by a divine just. Oh. Oh, just give it a little time, don't worry. Luckily, nothing like that has happened to anybody just yet. The grandson of the minister who trifled with the village as a result of Oyashiro's anger was, what did they call it again? Oh, right, Oni Kakashi. The minister's grandson was hidden away. That would probably be how the script is being written. I see. It probably would turn into something like that. Divine punishment wrought by Oyashiro-sama. Then the culprit is the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. That girl? Even I didn't know exactly what I was saying. The fact that Ooishi laughed it off was a bit of a relief. Ooishi's joyous laughter was so infectious that I began to laugh like an idiot as well. Oh, this is unusual. Ooishi, after laying into the horn several times, rolled the window down and leaned out, waving his arm in an exaggerated manner. It was a car, headed the opposite way. Until now, we hadn't run into any other cars except our own. And of all places, it was at this desolate location. It seemed that Ooishi knew the owner of that car. The other car also chirped its horn and came to a stop. Dr. Irie! Good afternoon! The other car's window rolled down slowly, showing a young man in a white overcoat. He was about my age, or perhaps a bit older. Can't really judge somebody by their appearance. Why, if it is Ooishi-san! Good afternoon! Fancy meeting you here. That's my line, Doctor. I never thought I'd see you here. What happened? Oh, nothing. Just a little house call. Oh, really? Was it an emergency? No, nothing quite that serious. Thankfully. I'll take my leave here. If I don't get back quickly, my staff will be angry with me. Being the head of a clinic must be tough. Well then, take care. The young doctor named Irie, after gesturing his farewell, drove forwards and disappeared around a corner. Or she also drove forwards, but soon came to a stop again. He pulled out a worn map book from the dash. His expression didn't have an ounce of irreverence. He was perfectly serious. Is it? The clinic shouldn't be making any house calls today. Must have been quite an emergency, or otherwise a patient with some extenuating circumstance. Well, she flipped through the pages, opening up to the map of Takatsuro. After that, he took a look around and started to figure out what our current location was. You saying that emergency is suspicious? Didn't I say? There's hardly anybody that lives in the Takatsuro area. The road we're on right now is here. Dr. Irie came from this direction. Having no sense of our surroundings, I couldn't digest anything about the place he was indicating on the map. We are heading towards the spot where the wallet was found. By the way, that's here. See? If you're heading to one of the few residences in Takatsuro, it's the wrong road. Meaning, Dr. Irie came from a direction where there are no residents. As long as somebody working in the fields between these mountains didn't collapse. If somebody collapses and you call a doctor, normally you'd bring them back with you for a more detailed examination. But just now, Dr. Irie said it was nothing serious, and it didn't seem like anybody else was in the car with him. Ooishi didn't say any more than that. I also said nothing more. That doctor just now examined a patient close by. Only that. Noisy radio suddenly got quiet. The sky had just as suddenly turned an oppressive color. As Ooishi mused that it might start to rain, a torrential downpour started, as though trying not to disappoint him. Eventually, Ooishi stopped the car. The only sounds to break the silence were the percussion of the rain on the roof and the soft squeak of the windshield wipers. Let's do this a bit hush-hush, shall we? Saying that in a quiet voice, he exited the car without an umbrella, careful not to make any noise. Ooishi leaned over, indicating the other side of the thicket. He was pointing to a prefabricated shed in a car that was parked beside it. The car looked obviously well cared for. It wasn't a vehicle that had been left there for several years. What's that shed? It contains equipment used by the Forestry Service. I heard that they don't go near it except during the summertime. Does that car belong to somebody from the Forestry Service then? Dunno. It doesn't look like an official vehicle though. Ooishi was playing it cool, but my nervousness was gradually increasing. Just in case. Saying that, Ooishi returned to the car. I thought he was going to get an umbrella, but he had grabbed the onboard radio instead. Hello, this is Ooishi. Do you read? Greetings. Yes, this is the Yokonomiya SP. Ooishi-san, we read you loud and clear. Over. I'm currently in front of the Forestry Service's equipment shed. Not the one in the direction of Yagochi, the one in Takatsuro, if you head there from Hinamizawa. Affirmative, copy that. There's some suspicious people in the shed. Proceeding to investigate. If you don't hear back from me in 5 minutes, get in touch with the local police substation and have them send a cruiser here as soon as possible. If you would, please. Understood. Well then, shall we go take a look? Since he was first confined here, he had heard the sound of a car multiple times, but he just thought the far-off sound was more of the same. However, the reaction from his captors was, until now, something he hadn't seen before. They jumped, reacting as if shocked by a jolt of electricity, and pressed against the window, cautiously peering outside. They stopped. Somebody from the Forestry Service? This is bad. Nah, looks like a cop to me. One of the captors lifted the boy by his collar and pressed a blade against his cheek. Kid, quiet for a bit. I think you know this, but if you try and shout, there'll be problems. Inugai Toshiki was sure that the doctor had reported things to the police. He had felt relief when he thought that he was saved, but not imagining that his captors would resort to violence when they were cornered. His anxiety remained unabated. What do we do? Guided by time. Take the kid and slip out of the back. You'll meet here when the heat's off. One of the perpetrators grabbed the boy by the collar and forced him to stand. Of course, Inugai Toshiki tried to resist by feigning that his illness had been aggravated by this rough treatment, but his captors paid no heed. Bang, bang, bang! The door was violently banged upon. Excuse me, hello? Bang, 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 bang. The door was banged on again. Inugai Toshiki hesitated for a moment to respond to that voice by yelling. However, while he was being indecisive, his mouth was covered, taking that option away from him. The leader of the captors waved at the other to go. The younger perpetrator nodded in response, and while keeping the boy's mouth cover, started heading towards the back door. Hello? Do you need something? Hello? You need some... How do you do? This is the police. Would you mind opening the door? This sudden rain has got us in a bit of trouble. I'll just open... The moment the lock was undone, Ooishi forced the door open, and with a gleam of menace in his eyes, he pushed the man aside as he stepped into the room. Then, in the small and empty room, he was quickly to discern that the boy he was looking for was nowhere to be seen. I heard this was an equipment shed for the Forestry Service. But there's nothing here at all. There was nothing inside the room that would indicate this was an equipment shed. There was only a mountain of blankets, indicating that somebody was sleeping here, alongside empty food packets strewn about. It's been empty for some time now. I never seen no equipment stored around here. But this is the Forestry Service's building, isn't it? Are you from the Forestry Service? How about ya, police? The two of them glared at each other suspiciously. Both Ooishi and the man steadfastly refused to reveal their identity before the other did. The man, judging from a sharp look in Oishi's eyes, realized that it would be hard to talk his way out of this one. No matter what he said, the most time he could buy would probably be only a few dozen seconds. Only the sound of rain filled this tense moment. Just then, they heard a sound of a struggle from far off. Ooishi had a hunch. There was no doubt that Akasaka, who was circling around the back, had run into the perpetrators who was trying to slip away. As Ooishi thought that, the man in front of him reacted a moment faster. The man swung with an attack that was more intended to obscure Oishi's vision rather than actually hit him in the face. Seizing his opportunity, the man aimed a kick at Oishi's groin without hesitation. No, he needs that for his air conditioning. But he missed his mark and was unable to land that critical blow. The man, trying to pin Ooishi, grabbed him by the base of his neck with both hands and fiercely tried to push him down. But as Ooishi fell backwards, as if kicking the man upward, he dug his foot into the man's midsection. With that leg acting as a fulcrum, the man was flung by the falling Ooishi as if by a circle throw. The two of them squared off in the pouring rain. Isn't this interesting? You want to go? Ooishi, as if trying to cheer himself on, grinned smugly. He then stood up while brushing the mud off himself. Even though he countered the assault, Ooishi was getting up rather awkwardly compared to the man who he threw, who swiftly sprang to his feet. Ooishi-san, hurry! Akasaka's voice rang out from the distance. Judging from the distress in his voice, he was already engaged in a fight and wanted Ooishi to reconvene with him. But Oishi's hands were full as well. Akasaka-san, sorry, but can you wait a bit? The man raised both his fists into a stance that hinted at him being acquainted with karate or some other form of martial art. Of course, Ooishi, as an officer of the law, was decently versed in judo. He also had the moxie to have been through his fair share of fights before. Because of that, he could tell that the man in front of him was quite a bit better at fighting than he was. Ah, damn it. I think that this was going to be easy just because the order came from the Sonozaki family to release the hostage has been a big mistake. They're pretty good. It's been a while since I got this worked up. Ooishi played off the situation like it was no sweat. His opponent, seeing his attitude, took that to mean that Ooishi wasn't going to go down easily. The man wildly charged forward, attempting to grab Ooishi. If the man managed a successful clinch from his low stance, Ooishi would be tackled to the ground and end up being mounted. It was something you saw often when children fought, but it was really a bad position, since you couldn't do much once you were in it. Ooishi, responding to that move, also lowered his stance to collide with the man head-on. The moment they clashed, Ooishi grabbed the man's lapel. As he yanked the lapel upwards, he smashed into the man's solar plexus with the elbow of the same arm. It was a move from Oishi's own personal brand of brawling judo. He then grabbed on with his free hand and attempted to throw his opponent with both hands. But the man lowered his center of gravity and swung his arms in a large arc, entwining them with Oishi's. Not only that, but he had forced both of Oishi's elbows to the outside, and Ooishi, now in an awkward position, was in danger of exposing his back with his hands still clutching the man's chest. This guy practiced Aikido or grappling, didn't he? Ooishi, cursing the fact that his fingers were twisted into the man's shirt and couldn't get away, released his grip. But he was still in the awkward position of being bent over. And to top it off, at zero range, the man was able to read Oishi's movements completely as he tried to squirm his way into a better position. And then he took the palms of his hands and swiftly clapped them over both of Oishi's ears. Ah! Clapping the ears in any other martial art except for self-defense was basically forbidden. Karate and Judo didn't recognize it as a legal technique. It was that much of a simple and dangerous attack. Ooishi raised both of his hands as he tried to reflexively clutch at his own ears. But before that could happen, the man wrapped his arms around Oishi's neck. His thick biceps clenched firmly around the base of Oishi's neck like a vise. Ooishi instinctively thought he was going to be killed. After all, it wasn't hard to believe that a man like this, who was accustomed to fighting, could crush his opponent's neck from this position. But his opponent didn't do that. He had chosen to keep his hold and force Ooishi to lose consciousness. That's why Ooishi, at that moment, even though his face was twitching, was grinning wildly. Even though his opponent had a chance to kill him, he didn't choose to. He was thinking, this guy has no intention of killing me. However, even though that might be the case, the man's hold on his neck was by no means gentle. In no time at all, Oishi's consciousness began to fade. Having the experience of being taken down countless times in judo during his student days, Ooishi was utterly resigned to the fact that it was over. Akasaka was finally recovering from the intense pain of being kicked in a rather sensitive area. And let's just say it was already a good thing. It was a good thing his wife was already pregnant, and leave it at that. He had bumped into the captor carrying the boy by the back entrance. He had seen Inugai Toshiki's picture plenty of times, but wasn't able to immediately ascertain if the boy in front of him was the real deal. What was his mouth covered in packing tape? Also, with his limited experience, it wasn't hard for him to panic over how to deal with the situation. Of course, the perpetrator didn't overlook this momentary lapse. His kick landed squarely in a critical spot, with Akasaka not even having time to call for help. As the man flung the boy over his shoulder, he headed towards the front of the shed. But upon hearing Oishi's bellowing voice, he gave up on going in that direction. He then dashed off towards the forest, as if the weight of the boy slung over his shoulder wasn't even there. Akasaka was lost for a moment. Meeting up with Ooishi, who was fighting with the enemy, was by far the safer option. But he couldn't just lose sight of the fleeing man. Akasaka stood up and chased after the captor's back. He ran through a short thicket, branches and fallen leaves crunching underfoot. The tips of branches raked and clawed at him, small scratches inscribing themselves on his body one after another. He kept on stepping into puddles and mud, and his shoes were soon filled with murky water. For Akasaka, traveling through this unexplored forest was, even though this was an extreme emergency situation, extremely unpleasant. No shit. Stop! This is the police! Stop! This is the police! As he said that, he regretted it immediately, as it was but a waste of breath. There wasn't a thief in the world that would possibly stop when told by the police. To a city boy like Akasaka, running through this forest was an arduous task. However, it must have been no easy task either for the man carrying the minister's grandson. He neither gained nor lost ground in his pursuit. Akasaka, upon realizing that, gained back a bit of composure. Just to keep on chasing him. We were running in the same conditions. In fact, the man running with an awkward stride was at far more of a disadvantage. They couldn't run forever. Eventually, he'd definitely trip and fall. As long as he was being hounded, he would definitely stumble. And soon his wish was fulfilled. Whoa! The man who had stepped in something and lost his balance was no longer able to bear the weight of the boy, dropping him. Akasaka, in all honesty, didn't care about the perpetrator at all, just as long as he could ensure the safety of Inugai Toshiki. So, if the perpetrator ran off by himself, it was perfectly acceptable. But it seemed that Inugai Toshiki was important to the man as well, and didn't elect to just run away empty-handed. Akasaka didn't know what to do in this kind of situation. His first priority should probably be to ensure the safety of the boy, subduing his captor being less important. Grappling with the perpetrator wasn't something he planned on, but most likely it was either do or die. Akasaka's moment of indecision proved to be fatal. The man aiming right between, or rather, for both of Akasaka's eyes, struck out with a jab. Not wanting that, Akasaka raised both of his hands to shield his face. At that moment, the man kicked at his unguarded midsection. The pain almost felt like his vital organs were being squeezed out of his body, but he latched onto his opponent's leg. But his opponent didn't hesitate one bit. Leaning with his seized foot, the man jumped at Akasaka, applying pressure and pushing him down. Akasaka was unable to withstand that and fell, but under no circumstances was he letting that leg go. The two men fell together in a tangled heap. The man was desperate to pull his leg free from Akasaka, but having fallen in an awkward position, was unable to. The two of them rolled around on the ground, floundering about, trying to gain an advantage. but Akasaka, who was holding on to his opponent's knee with both hands, and that opponent, who had complete freedom to move his upper body, were in two completely different situations. The man gained a positional advantage on Akasaka, who was still latched onto his leg and couldn't move away, and pounded full force on his head with both fists. Not only that, he found a rock nearby and beat it against Akasaka's skull. Whack, 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 whack! The difference between being hit with a fist and being hit with a rock was vast. People die when they are killed. Akasaka quickly thought of letting go of the man's leg to free his hands to protect his head. But if he let go here, the man would get away. If he didn't dig in here, everything would be for naught. The boy he was trying to save was right there. He was going to save him and go back to Tokyo. If he could do that, then it was goodbye to this freakish village. Bam, crack, thud! Without looking, I could tell by my forehead had split and open and was gushing blood, but I didn't let go of the man's leg. How could I? I won't let go. When the man realized that no matter how much he beat my head, he wasn't getting away, he used both his hands to grab my throat as if to clutch my windpipe. I pulled my head back as a slight form of resistance, but it was of no use. The man's hands enveloped my neck and began to crush it like a vise. It was less about the pain of not being able to breathe as so much as it was choking so hard I felt like I was going to throw up. It felt like my stomach was going to turn itself inside out, but I could only endure it. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. My throat hurts. I won't let go. I can't let go. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to resolve this and go back to Tokyo. Go back to Tokyo and talk to Yuki. All about our unborn child. We were going to talk about our bright future. I had no intention of loosening my grip. However, it loosened just a bit and the man's leg came free. The man kicked as hard as possible and I tumbled backwards. My head was spinning and I was unable to get up right away. No, I couldn't even put any strength into getting up in the first place. Even so, I couldn't back down. If I let him escape now, this chance would never come again. Even just catching their scent was nothing short of a miracle. If we weren't able to get the minister's grandson back here, there wouldn't be another chance. The man tried to drag the boy to his feet, but the kid was displaying some unexpected resistance, allowing me to get up unnoticed. I grasped the rock the man had just beat me over the head with. Now it's my turn. Yeah. The rock should be able to supplement what meager strength I had left, adding more than enough power to my attack. My fist, still wrapped around the rock, dug into the side of the man's torso. It seems like it hurt him quite a bit. The man rolled around for a bit, clutching his side. Freed from the man's grip, the boy hid behind me. "You guy Toshiki, right? I've come to help you." To the boy, those were the words he was waiting for the most. But the crisis was still not over. That was because even though he was still clutching at his side, the man had guarded it up again and had taken a fighting stance. I could see in the man's eyes the resentment at the pain I had caused him, and the confidence that he could still beat me. If we were to clash head on again, he might not even stop even if my head were split open. Stop resisting. Surrender quietly. You should just hand the boy over. Do you want me to snap your neck? Who would listen to you now? Reinforcements are already on their way. There's nowhere for you to run. The man reacted adversely to the word reinforcements. That was because he now knew that arguing like this wasn't just a waste of time, but put him closer and closer to danger. Realizing that, the man shifted mental gears almost too quickly. Then let's finish this fast. How about this? What? When the man pulled from his pocket was, of all things, a gun. Of course, I'm a police officer. Not like I don't know what a gun is. But having one pointed at me was something I'd never experienced before. Was it real? Of course it was. There's no way it'd be a replica in a situation like this. Put both your hands behind your head and lay down quietly. Don't get cocky, you villain. I won't do anything you say. You stupid idiot! Do you not know what this is without me shooting you with it? Then shoot. Reinforcements will hear the gunshot and head right over here. Are you stupid? We're in the middle of the forest, and on top of that, it's raining. I'll never hear a thing. As long as he still held that gun, no matter how much I yelled at him, I was at a distinct disadvantage. But I still had a fighting chance. If I were in his shoes, instead of wasting time yelling at each other like this, I would just shoot him and take the boy. That way was the fastest and would suppress any sort of further resistance from him. But the man was demanding my surrender without having fired a shot, meaning that he either didn't want to shoot or couldn't. In other words, the man in front of me was soft. If I could buy even just a little more time, the factors that would lead to my victory were numerous. Ooishi was probably on his way, and the reinforcements we called before coming here should already be well on their way too. Not only that, they should have contacted the local police box. Without a doubt, somebody stationed in the village would be here much quicker than that. Damn it! Do I have to put a bullet in you to understand how dangerous this thing is? There's no escape. Don't add to your crimes. At that moment, I heard the rustling of foliage and heavy footsteps approaching. If Ooishi was coming here, it was a whole new ballgame. The man couldn't have more than one gun. Ooishi-san! Over here! Over here! Huh? I had thought that time was on my side. But I had failed to even imagine that the enemy could also have reinforcements. You could tell the man who had just appeared was one of the perpetrators just by looking at him. What are you doing? If you don't hurry up, the police will get here. Stop lollygagging. Damn it. What happened to Ooishi-san? Ah, the chubby fella. He's down for the count. He is? Damn it. The boy, sensitive to the impending danger, curled up behind my back. What could this be? Damn it. Your buddy isn't coming. Serves you right. Shoes on the other foot now. As I backed up against a large tree while still protecting the boy. The second man also pulled out a gun. So much for not having another gun. Won't be seeing this twice. Put your hands on your head and lie down. I refuse. As I shouted in protest, blood erupted from my left shoulder. It took a few moments to register that I had been shot. Compared to the ones from in movies and TV dramas, the first actual gunshot I heard was simple and mundane. In fact, the sound was more akin to the small fireworks I used to buy from the corner store as a kid. But there was no comparing the pain. It was a fear you knew only after you've been shot. Ah! Sir! Are you okay? Are you okay? The boy, in his confusion, tugged at my clothes, agitating the wound even further. I wanted to put on a bold face and reassure him, but my voice was hoarse and had the opposite effect. I'm all right. I've already called for backup. There'll be a full squad here soon. Yeah. It'll be quicker to put one through your head before the cops get here. But the family said no needless killing, so I'm taking it easy on ya. Don't mess with me, or I ain't holding back. This was bad. It was very, very bad. The second man was a completely different beast than the first. He had no signs of indecisiveness or mercy. This man said he'd shoot. He'd shoot. He wasn't somebody that a man like me could buy time from. I really hated to admit it. At that moment, the image of Yukie's smiling face crossed the back of my mind. I knew what that meant. I was warning myself to not throw my life away over a matter of pride. Of course, I didn't want to die here. I was just starting a new life with Yukie, and I wanted to see the face of our soon-to-be-born child. Why should I risk my life for some minister's grandson when I was at such a critical juncture in my own life? Damn it! Damn it! I need to stop rambling at myself. So what do I do now? Give up the boy and extend my own life? What a good idea! Everybody's life is precious. My own life was in danger. Nobody would blame me. God damn it! It hurts. It hurts. If I had known it would be this painful, I wouldn't have played the tough guy. My biggest miscalculation, was that the sound of the gunshot was far quieter than I had imagined. If it was only that loud, it would be drowned out by the rain of the forest. It wasn't something that somebody far away could hear. Damn it! Wait, just wait. I don't want to die. And I don't want to kill ya. As long as you understand. Don't shoot, okay? Don't shoot. I have a wife waiting for me at home. I don't want to die. I won't shoot as long as you don't yell or nothing. Just quietly put your hands on your head and lie down. Will you really? Look, you keep your promise, right? This is a promise between men. I will! It's a promise between men. Keep your promise. Keep it. I'm going to get down on the ground, okay? I'm getting down. I'll keep my promise, so stop pointing that gun at me. You're still thinking of shooting me, aren't you? You want to shoot me, don't you? When I get down on the ground, you're going to shoot me in the back of the head, aren't you? I won't. Fine, I'll put it away. I'll put the gun away. The promise between men, there. No problem now, right? Yeah, absolutely no complaints. It was over in a flash. The moment he lowered his gun, Ooishi didn't let his chance slip by. Ooishi had been assessing the situation for quite some time from behind the two men. But since they had their guns trained on me, he didn't really have the chance to jump in. Seeing the look on Oishi's face indicated that he wanted me to create an opening. I took on that role completely. Ooishi forcefully lifted the arm that was holding the gun. He then took the gun from the man's hand in only an instant. The other man, who was a bit slow in grasping what was happening, pointed his gun at them, but with his ally grappling with Ooishi, he couldn't pull the trigger. If that man was one wrestling with Ooishi at the moment, he might have shot without hesitation. But this man wouldn't shoot. He couldn't shoot. Ooishi kicked the other man away while aiming the stolen gun with his left hand, and, while aiming the stolen gun with his left hand, pulled out his own. With guns akimbo, he was aiming at both men at the same time. I do believe that's checkmate. It was perfectly played. But heedless of the guns pointed at them, the men shouted scram as they scattered away at full speed. It was over in an instant. Those two running away without putting up a fight was honestly unexpected. Ooishi quietly flicking his tongue in his admonishment, slipped both guns into his pants pockets. Those guys know their stuff. What do you mean? An officer won't fire at somebody who's fleeing. I want to keep my pension here. Ooishi and I grinned at each other. Are you Inugai Toshiki, the grandson of the Minister of Construction, Inugai? Yes. This is gonna be a major incident. We probably only cut the tail off the lizard, though. Ooishi smiled amusedly. The fact that the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance, or rather the Sonozaki family behind them, was pulling the strings was apparent, but proving it wouldn't be easy. And with apologies to Ooishi, this incident was unlikely to go public. If this caused an uproar, it would obviously lead to the minister losing his office. With HQ having decided that doing so was in the national interest, this would probably be cleaned up quietly. It might be a rough way of saying it, but this was born in the shadows and was going to die in the shadows. Ooishi probably already understood the implications behind the incident. For the time being, let's cordon off the area. It seems that one of them still has a gun. After that, let's get Inugai-kun to safety and get you to the hospital. As the tension of the situation faded, the pain from the gunshot wound in my shoulder blossomed once again. My forehead was also stinging painfully and had grown hot enough to start a fire. Thinking that the tension had caused me to sweat, I wiped my forehead, but what came off was a large amount of blood. I realized that my shirt had been stained bright crimson from the blood flowing from my head. I turned around. The boy was safe and sound. Without a doubt. With certainty. There would probably be an investigation on the men who ran, but that was for another day. At this point in time, I could safely say we had cleared the major hurdle of securing the boy's safety. As soon as I recognized that, it felt like the lights in my head had been hit by a power failure. My knees buckled from underneath me, the ground there feeling as soft as a cloud. It didn't feel unpleasant, even as I was covered in the rain-soaked mud. Ooishi came closer, asking if I was okay, but somehow I couldn't tell. I turned off the switch to the last light in my head. That exhaustion. The exhaustion enveloped me. Sleep. Something softer than any blanket wrapped around me. You have received a new tip. A very kind person. Oh, let's read it. Patients admitted to the hospital can only accept calls at fixed times. That's why she wouldn't be receiving a call from him today. Yesterday, she had teased him that he got lonely easily, so he might have struggled with the idea of calling her sooner. That was much easier to imagine rather than that he might just be busy to call. Because he's just that type of person. Yukie whispered that, smiling to himself. The announcement that visiting hours were over played over the hospital intercom along with some music. He exchanged pleasantries with the family of the patient that was staying in the same room as her, probably eager for his mother to be discharged. Their small child was wearing a beaming smile. That child's mother was pregnant in the bed next to mine, with what may be their new brother or sister. They were probably ready to burst with the expectations, dreams, and worries of having a new sibling. Joys, growing family. Bathing in those warm feelings, broke my own belly, which had grown quite large. I had talked with him about how many children we wanted. We talked about how if we had 3, it would certainly be lively. However, there was the inescapable worry of whether I would be able to handle giving birth that many. There isn't a mother out there who would hate to give birth because of that worry, though. Yukie, smiling as she said that to herself, gently stroked her stomach. Metropolitan Public Safety Division. The place where that man's sense of justice had led him. That person was actually a very gentle, fragile person. He didn't talk much about the specifics, but I didn't think he was suited for the assignment he was on right. But as long as he said he was going to try his best, watch over him warmly. Father, you see, very hard worker. Where'd she go? She seemed to be enjoying herself as she talked to her own belly. At that moment, Jay suddenly turned about something out the window. This could be this time, long ago. Remembered that when she was little, around this time in the countryside where her grandmother lived, the Higurashi filled the air with their chorus. This was the middle of Tokyo. Unlike in the countryside, you couldn't hear the song of the Higurashi. But for some reason, at that moment, felt that she wanted to hear that song. Alright. Well, citizens, that was the end of Chapter 4 of Himatsubushi. And as much as I'd like to say to you all now, have a good night and farewell.